Commander Jin was drinking his morning coffee when the emergency alarm shattered the quiet of Earth's deep space. Command Center. The red lights flashed across the control room as his communication officer, Lieutenant Park, rushed toward him with a pale face. "Sir, we're getting a distress signal from mining station Kepler 442, Park said, his voice shaking. It's not good." Jin set down his coffee and moved to the main console. The static-filled transmission crackled through the speakers. He could hear the voice of Station Chief Lee, a man Jin had known for 5 years, a tough, experienced miner who had survived asteroid storms and space pirates. "This is Kepler 442 to any ship in range." Lee's voice came through, interrupted by strange electronic screeching sounds. "We're under attack by... I don't know what these things are. They're not human. They're not anything we've seen before. They're hunting us through the corridors. They've shut down our power, our weapons. Everything is the transmission cut." To screams. Horrible, terrifying screams that made everyone in the command center freeze. Through the static, they could hear the sound of metal being torn apart. People running. Something else. A sound like electricity being drained from machines. "Get me Captain Cho and his reconnaissance team," Jin ordered. "We leave in 20 minutes. The journey to Kepler 442 took 3 hours through hyperspace. Jin sat in the captain's chair of the military vessel Soul's Pride, staring at the empty space where the mining station should have been broadcasting its location beacon. Nothing. Complete radio silence. "Sir," called out Navigation Officer Kim, "we're approaching the station's coordinates now." What they found made Jin's blood run cold. The massive mining station, which had housed 300 workers, was still there, but it was completely dark. No lights, no power signatures, no life signs. It floated in space like a dead whale, its hull torn open in several places. "Take us in closer," Jin commanded. "But keep the shields up and weapons ready." Captain Cho, a veteran soldier with 20 years of combat experience, led the boarding party. Jin watched through the helmet cameras as Cho's team moved through the station's corridors. Their flashlights cut through the darkness, revealing a scene of complete devastation. The hallways were filled with the bodies of miners, but something was wrong. The bodies looked drained, almost mummified. Their tools, their communication devices, their emergency equipment, everything electronic had been completely destroyed. Not by explosion or fire, but as if something had sucked the life out of the technology itself. Commander Cho's voice came through the radio. "You need to see this. We found the security room." The security room was a disaster. Banks of computer monitors lay shattered, their screens cracked and dark. But somehow the main backup drive had survived. Jin's tech specialist, Sergeant Nam, managed to extract the final hour of security footage. What they saw on the recovered video made Jin's hands shake. Sleek, silver creatures, about the size of large dogs, but moving like liquid. Metal poured through the station's ventilation systems. They had glowing red eyes that seemed to scan everything around them. But the most terrifying part was how they moved with perfect coordination, like they were all connected to one mind. The creatures systematically hunted down the miners. When they caught someone, they would place their metal hands on any electronic device nearby. Devices would spark, smoke, and then die completely. The creatures seemed to grow slightly larger each time they drained a machine. Jin watched in horror as the video showed. Station Chief Lee making his final desperate call for help. Behind him, one of the creatures approached silently. Just before the transmission ended, the creature looked directly into the security camera. Its red eyes seemed to stare right through the screen, right at Jin himself. Sir Nam said quietly, "Look at the timestamp. This footage is from yesterday. Whatever these things are, they've been here for over 18 hours. "They now?" Jin asked. Cho's voice crackled through the radio. "Commander, we've found something else. There's a hole in the station's hull. It looks like something broke out from the inside. And sir, there are scratch marks on the metal. These creatures were trying to get out, not in." Jin felt his stomach drop. These weren't raiders who had attacked the station. These were scouts. It had been imprisoned somehow, had broken free, and had consumed the station's technology to grow stronger. The attack on Kepler 442 wasn't the main event. It was just the beginning. All teams returned to the ship immediately. Jin ordered. "We're leaving now." As the Soul's Pride pulled away from the dead mining station, Jin stared at the tactical display. If these creatures were scouts, then something much bigger was coming. Something that had sent these advanced forces to test humanity's defenses. Jin opened a priority channel to Earth Command. "This is Commander Jin. I need to speak with the Galactic Council immediately. We have a threat that could destroy every civilization in the galaxy, and I don't think anyone is going to believe us." The red eyes of the creature staring into the camera haunted Jin's thoughts. Somewhere out there in the darkness of space, something was coming. And humanity had very little time to prepare for what might be the greatest threat they had ever faced. Commander Jin had never felt so small as he stood in the massive circular chamber of the Galactic Council Station. The enormous dome stretched high above his head, with floating platforms holding representatives from dozens of alien species. Their advanced technology made the chamber shimmer with holographic displays and energy fields that humans could barely understand. Admiral Tay, Earth's senior military representative, stood beside Jin at the central podium. She was a tough woman in her 50s who had spent her entire career preparing for this moment, the day humanity would need to address the entire galaxy about a threat to their survival. "Honored council members," Admiral Tay began, her voice echoing through the chamber's translation systems. "We bring urgent news of a threat that could destroy every civilization in this galaxy." A wave of laughter rippled through the chamber. The sound came from the Valorian Empire's section, where tall, blue-skinned aliens with glowing marks on their foreheads sat in their jeweled chairs. Their leader, Counselor Zix, was a particularly arrogant specimen who had made it clear many times that he considered humans to be nothing more than clever animals. "Oh, please," Zix said, his voice dripping with mockery. "The baby species wants to tell us about galactic threats. How amusing. What's next? Are you going to warn us about space storms?" The Crystal Confederation representatives, beings made of living crystal who communicated through harmonic vibrations, also seemed amused. Their leader, a towering figure called Resonance Prime, made a sound like breaking glass that Jin's translator interpreted as laughter. "Let them speak," said a voice from the corner. It belonged to the Morphic Collective, shape-shifting beings who rarely took sides in council matters. Ow. Even children sometimes see things adults miss. Admiral Tay nodded gratefully and activated the holographic display. The security footage from Kepler 442 began playing in the center of the chamber. The silver creatures with glowing red eyes moved across the display, systematically hunting down miners and draining their technology. "These creatures appeared at our mining station 3 days ago," Tay explained. "We're calling them harvesters. They consume technology to grow stronger and multiply. Our analysis suggests they're scouts for something much larger." The chamber fell silent as the aliens watched the footage. Jin could see some of the smaller species looking worried, but the major powers remained dismissive. "Pathetic," Zix announced. "Your species sees monsters in every shadow. These are probably just some unknown animals from your own solar system. Primitive humans always panic when they encounter something they don't understand." With respect, Counselor Jin spoke up, surprising himself with his boldness. These creatures drained every piece of technology on a station built to withstand asteroid impacts. They moved with perfect coordination, like they were connected to a single mind. "So what?" laughed another Valorian. "Our shields could stop 1,000 such creatures. Our weapons could destroy them before they even reached our ships." Admiral Tay brought up the detailed analysis that Dr. Na had prepared. Charts showed how the creatures had absorbed energy from the station's power cores, how they had grown larger after each technological absorption, and most importantly, how they had seemed to learn from each encounter. "The evidence suggests these harvesters adapt to whatever technology they encounter," Tay said. "The more advanced the technology, the more they seem to gain from consuming it. If they encounter your advanced civilizations..." "Enough." Zix stood up, his blue skin now glowing with anger. This council will not be frightened by the paranoid fantasies of a species that still uses chemical rockets. You humans are so primitive that you've probably created these recordings yourselves to get attention. The Crystal Confederation's representative chimed in with a sound like wind through crystal caves. The translator rendered it as, "We agree with the Valorians. This appears to be human desperation for relevance in galactic affairs." Jin felt his face burning with anger and frustration. "You're making a mistake. These creatures are already spreading. We detected similar energy signatures near the Outer Rim territories yesterday," Lai Zix declared. "Our sensors would have detected any such threat long before your primitive equipment could." Admiral Tay tried one more time, requesting permission to coordinate a joint defense. "Our military analysts believe that if we work together—" "Absolutely not," Zix interrupted. "The Valorian Empire will not waste resources on human fairy tales. Furthermore, effective immediately, all human ships are banned from Valorian space. We will not have panic-spreading primitives disrupting our trade routes." The Crystal Confederation quickly agreed to the same ban. Within minutes, most of the major powers had voted to restrict human ships from their territories. Only a few smaller species abstained from the vote. "This session is closed," Zix announced. "Perhaps next time, humans will bring actual evidence instead of amateur fiction." As the council session ended and the alien representatives filed out, Jin noticed that some of the smaller species looked concerned. A representative from the Tau Mining Guild approached them quietly. "Your evidence is disturbing," the Tau whispered. "Our outer mining stations have gone silent in the past week. Thought it was equipment failure. But now? Contact us immediately if you see anything unusual," Admiral Tay said urgently. "Don't try to fight them alone." Back on Earth, Dr. Na and her research team worked around the clock in the underground laboratories beneath Sol, while the Galactic Council mocked humanity's warnings. She knew the truth. The energy signatures they had detected were spreading. More stations were going dark. The harvesters were multiplying. "How long do we have?" asked her assistant, Dr. Yoon. Na looked at the projected invasion routes on her screen. "Based on their current rate of spread, maybe 6 months before they reach the major alien homeworlds. The Council species will realize we were right when their advanced fleets start falling from the sky. And us. We have maybe 3 months to find a way to stop them," Na said grimly. "Because when the harvesters finish consuming all that advanced alien technology, Earth will be their desert." The warning had been given. It had been ignored. Now humanity faced the terrifying task of preparing to fight a threat that the rest of the galaxy refused to believe existed. Captain Huan was monitoring routine patrol routes from the Earth Defense Force ship Busan Guardian, when his sensor, Operator Lieutenant Go, suddenly went white as snow. "Sir, you need to see this," Go whispered, his hands trembling as he pointed at the long-range sensor display. Something massive just appeared at the edge of Valorian space. Juan moved to the sensor station and felt his blood freeze. The display showed thousands of contacts now, tens of thousands. The computer was still counting, but the numbers kept climbing. 50,000, 100,000, 200,000. The sensors couldn't get an exact count because the objects were moving in such tight formation they appeared as one massive shadow. "Get me Admiral Tay immediately," one ordered, "and patch me through to the Valorian Defense Network. They need to know what's coming." But before the communication could go through, the Valorian emergency broadcast system activated across all channels. The proud blue face of Fleet Admiral Krez appeared on screen, his glowing forehead marks pulsing with confidence. "Citizens of the Valorian Empire," Krez announced, "our sensors have detected an unknown fleet approaching our homeworld. This is likely another test of our superior military might. All civilian ships are ordered to maintain standard traffic patterns. Our glorious fleet will demonstrate why the Valorian Empire rules this sector of the galaxy." Juan watched in horror as the Valorian fleet launched from their massive space stations. Over 5,000 warships, each one a masterpiece of advanced technology. Their energy shields shimmered like soap bubbles around sleek hulls. Their plasma cannons could vaporize entire asteroids. Their quantum torpedoes could crack planets in half. Have no idea what they're facing, Yuan muttered. The Valorian fleet arranged itself in perfect battle formation as they approached the unknown contacts. Admiral Krez's confident voice continued broadcasting across all frequencies, unidentified vessels. You are entering Valorian space without permission. Surrender now, or face the consequences of challenging the most advanced military force in the galaxy. There was no response from the approaching mass. As it got closer, Juan's sensors began to make out individual shapes. His heart stopped when he realized what he was seeing. The creatures from Kepler 442 had grown. They were no longer the size of dogs. Some were as large as shuttles. Others had grown to the size of small buildings. And there were millions of them. Swarming together like angry insects, their red eyes glowing like stars in the darkness. They've been feeding, Juan realized. Every civilization they've consumed has made them bigger and stronger. The Valorian fleet opened fire with everything they had. Plasma beams that could melt mountains lanced out toward the harvester swarm. Quantum torpedoes that could destroy space stations exploded in brilliant flashes of light. The energy output was so massive that it lit up the entire sector like a second sun. For a moment, it seemed like the Valorians were winning. Hundreds of harvesters were vaporized by the incredible firepower. But then something terrible happened. The remaining harvesters began to change. Their silver bodies started absorbing the energy from the Valorian weapons. Instead of being destroyed, they were feeding on the plasma beams and quantum explosions. No, Juan whispered, watching the nightmare unfold. They're using the energy to multiply. Each harvester that absorbed enough energy began to split into 2, then 4, then 8. Within minutes, the Valorian fleet found themselves facing twice as many enemies as before. The creatures had learned to turn the Valorians' own weapons against them. But the real horror was yet to come. As the harvesters swarmed closer to the Valorian ships, they began to make physical contact with the hulls. The moment their metallic claws touched the advanced alien technology, the ships began to die. Captain Juan watched through his sensors as the pride of the Valorian fleet, a massive dreadnought called Eternal Glory, suddenly went dark. Its shields flickered and died. Its weapons stopped firing. Its engines shut down. The ship began to drift helplessly as the harvesters crawled across its hull like parasites. Sir Lieutenant Go said, his voice shaking, the harvesters are draining the power from their ships. They're consuming the energy cores. Admiral Krez's confident broadcasts had turned to panic. All ships maintain distance. Do not let them touch your hulls. Pete, do not let them. His transmission cut off as his flagship was overwhelmed by a swarm of harvesters. The creatures had grown so large that dozens of them could envelop an entire warship. Within minutes, the most advanced vessels in the Valorian fleet were being consumed from the inside out. But the nightmare wasn't over. As the harvesters drained each ship completely, they used the consumed technology to grow even larger. Some now reached the size of small buildings. Others merged together to form massive entities the size of city blocks. And they kept multiplying. The crippled Valorian ships began falling toward their homeworld. Without power, without navigation, they crashed into the planet's surface like meteors. Juan watched the sensor readings as the beautiful capital city of Valorian Prime was crushed under the weight of its own falling fleet. They're not just destroying the ships, Juan realized. They're using them as delivery vehicles to get to the planet's surface. The harvesters poured out of the crashed ships and began consuming the planet's infrastructure. Power grids, communication networks, transportation systems, everything technological was being drained and absorbed. The creatures multiplied exponentially. As they fed on the advanced Valorian civilization, within 12 hours, Valorian Prime went completely dark. No communications, no energy signatures, no signs of life. The homeworld of the galaxy's most arrogant empire had been reduced to a dead rock floating in space. Sir, Go reported, we're detecting similar attacks beginning at Crystal Confederation space, and the Hegemony, and the Trade Federation. Juan stared at the tactical display showing red markers spreading across the galaxy like a plague. Marker represented a world under attack. Each world represented billions of lives about to be consumed. How many civilizations have they already destroyed to grow this strong? Juan asked quietly. Based on the size and number of harvesters, our computers estimate they've consumed at least 40 different species, Go replied. And sir, they're heading toward Earth. The galaxy's greatest military powers were falling like dominoes. The same alien civilizations that had mocked humanity's warnings were now being devoured by the very threat they had refused to believe existed. The slaughter had begun, and it was spreading faster than anyone had imagined possible. General Wu stood on the bridge of the Earth's battleship Indomitable, watching the galaxy burn through the view screen. Entire star systems flickered and died like candles being snuffed out one by one. The harvesters had swept through the galaxy's most advanced civilizations in mere weeks, consuming their technology, their energy, their very existence. Now only scattered groups of survivors remained, hiding in the darkness between stars. General, we're receiving another distress signal, reported Communications Officer Park, her voice tight with stress. It's from Nexus Station. They're saying the harvesters have found them. Wu's weathered face hardened. Nexus Station was one of the last major refugee centers, housing millions of beings from dozens of worlds. If it fell, the galaxy would lose. One of its final hopes for organized resistance. How many ships do we have operational, he asked. 47 vessels, sir, all outdated by galactic standards. The other races called our fleet primitive just last month. A bitter smile crossed Wu's lips. Primitive. That word might just save us all. He turned to face his crew. Set course for Nexus Station. All ships, battle formation. It's time to show the galaxy what Earth's obsolete fleet can do. The human fleet moved through space like a pack of wolves, their hulls scarred and their weapons ancient by galactic standards. While other civilizations had developed energy weapons that could reshape matter itself, humans still relied on kinetic projectiles and electromagnetic pulse devices. The Galactic Council had always looked down on Earth's military technology, calling it backward and inefficient. Now, those same primitive weapons might be humanity's greatest advantage. Lieutenant Sol bent over her sensor console, her fingers dancing across the holographic displays. For days, she had been analyzing the harvesters' behavior, looking for any weakness, any flaw that could be exploited. These creatures consumed energy in all its forms: plasma, laser, fusion, even the exotic matter that powered faster than light. Travel. They absorbed it, integrated it, became stronger with each civilization they devoured. General, I think I've found something, Sol called out, her voice filled with excitement and fear. The harvesters have a critical weakness. When they consume energy-based technology, they have to process it through their neural networks. But if we hit them with specific electromagnetic frequencies, the kind our EMP weapons produce, we can overload their systems. Wu moved to her station, studying the data streams. You're saying our electromagnetic pulse devices can hurt them. More than hurt them, sir. The frequencies can cause cascade failures in their nervous systems. They'll short circuit like old electronics hit by lightning. The general's eyes gleamed with something that might have been hope. And our ballistic weapons? Physical projectiles don't use energy they can absorb. A bullet is just metal and momentum. They can't consume kinetic energy the same way they consume plasma or lasers. For the first time in weeks, Wu allowed himself to smile. Sergeant Sung prepared the Marines for boarding operations. Traditional weapons only projectile rifles, explosive charges, anything that doesn't rely on energy-based technology. Sergeant Sung, a veteran of Earth's colonial wars, nodded grimly. Sir, the men are ready. We've been waiting for a chance to fight back. The journey to Nexus Station took 18 hours, during which the human fleet maintained radio silence. When they finally dropped out of hyperspace, the sight that greeted them was like something from a nightmare. Nexus Station, once a gleaming symbol of galactic cooperation, was now surrounded by harvester vessels, writhing, organic shapes that pulsed with stolen energy. The station itself was under attack. Harvester boarding pods latched onto its hull, like parasites drilling through the metal with tendrils that glowed with consumed power. Streams of refugees and escape pods fled the station, only to be captured by the waiting alien ships. "All ships, this is General Wu," he announced to his fleet. "Remember, energy weapons are useless against these things. We fight with steel and gunpowder, like our ancestors did.
Ow.
Show them what humanity is made of."
Ow.
The battle began with a barrage of kinetic projectiles. Human railguns fired solid metal. Slugs at incredible speeds, puncturing harvester holes that had easily absorbed the energy weapons of more advanced civilizations. The aliens recoiled in confusion, their bodies trying to consume the attack, but finding nothing but inert matter. Lieutenant Sol coordinated the EMP strikes, her fingers flying over the controls as she targeted the harvester's neural clusters. Firing electromagnetic pulse in 3.2.1. The space around Nexus Station lit up with invisible energy as dozens of EMP devices detonated simultaneously. The effect on the harvesters was immediate and devastating. The organic ships convulsed, their bioluminescent patterns flickering and dying as their nervous systems overloaded. Several of the smaller vessels went completely dark, drifting lifeless through space. "It's working," Sol shouted over the noise of battle. "They're vulnerable to electromagnetic interference." But the harvesters were quick to adapt, surviving. Vessels began changing their approach, trying to stay out of range of the EMP weapons while sending boarding parties to capture the human ships directly. "General, they're attempting to board us," reported the tactical officer. "Multiple contacts approaching the Indomitable." "Let them come," Wu replied grimly. "Sergeant Sung, your Marines are up." The boarding action was unlike anything in recorded galactic history. Instead of the clean, energy-based combat that had characterized warfare for millennia, the corridors of human ships echoed with the bark of gunpowder weapons and the clash of steel on chitin. Sergeant Sung led his Marines through the ship's passages, their rifles spitting bullets that the harvesters couldn't absorb or deflect. "Keep moving," Sung shouted, as his men fought their way through waves of alien boarders. "Don't let them pin us down." The harvesters, used to consuming their enemies' weapons, found themselves facing something they had never encountered before. Bullets tore through their organic armor, explosive charges shattered their exoskeletons, and flamethrowers burned their tissue with good old-fashioned chemical fire. But the cost was terrible. For every harvester that fell, 2 or 3 Marines died. The aliens were stronger, faster, and more numerous than the humans. Only their confusion at facing primitive weapons kept the Marines from being completely overwhelmed. The battle raged for hours. Human ships closed with harvester vessels, their crews fighting hand-to-hand with creatures that had devoured entire star systems. In the cargo bays and corridors, Marines with centuries-old weapons faced off against aliens with technology beyond imagination. It was during the rescue of a group of alien refugees that Sergeant Sung made his final stand. The survivors' representatives from a dozen different species were trapped in a sealed section of Nexus, stationed as harvester boarding. Parties closed in from all sides. "This is Sung," he radioed to his men. "I'm going to hold them here while you evacuate the civilians. Get them to the ships." "Sergeant, we can't leave you," came the voice of Corporal Kim. "Someone has to make sure these people get out alive." Sung positioned himself at the main entrance to the refugee section, his rifle loaded with armor-piercing rounds. Behind him, hundreds of alien civilians waited in terror, their own advanced weapons useless against the harvesters. They had never seen anything like this human who stood between them and certain death. Armed with nothing but metal bullets and determination, the harvesters came in waves, their organic forms flowing through the corridors like living nightmares. Sung's rifle chattered constantly, each shot precisely placed to maximize damage. When his ammunition ran low, he switched to grenades, the explosions lighting up the darkness with ancient fire and fury. "Tell them we tried to warn you," he whispered into his radio as the last of his grenades detonated, bringing down a section of the station's hull and sealing the breach behind the evacuating refugees. The explosion that followed could be seen from the human fleet. Sergeant Sung's final act had not only saved the refugees, but it also triggered a chain reaction that destroyed an entire section of harvester vessels. General Wu watched from the bridge as the surviving harvesters began to retreat, their confidence shaken by their encounter with humanity's primitive weapons. The rescue had been successful, but the cost had been enormous. Half of his Marines were dead or wounded, and 3 of his ships had been lost. General Lieutenant Sol reported, her voice filled with awe and grief. "We've rescued over 200,000 refugees, representatives from 47 different species." And Sergeant Sung? He didn't make it out, sir. But his actions saved them all. Wu closed his eyes for a moment, feeling the weight of command and loss. When he opened them, again, his expression was determined. "Send a message to all surviving civilizations. Tell them that Earth's fleet stands ready to fight. Our weapons may be primitive, but they work. We found a way to hurt these things." Found. As the human fleet prepared to depart with their rescued cargo, General Wu looked out at the stars where other worlds burned. The galaxy had dismissed Earth as backward and primitive. But now those same qualities might be what saved them all. The war was far from over. But for the first time since the harvesters had appeared, the galaxy had hope. Were the best ways, and sometimes being primitive was exactly what you needed to survive in a universe gone mad. The Earth's communication networks buzzed with desperate messages from across the galaxy. Ships limping through space, their hulls torn in bleeding atmosphere, carried the last survivors of one's mighty civilizations. The proud Zephyrians who had laughed at humanity's primitive weapons just months ago now sent broken transmissions begging for sanctuary. Their crystal cities lay in ruins, their advanced fleets reduced to scattered debris floating in the void. Dr. Yoon stood in her underground laboratory, surrounded by the chaos of her life's work. In desperate handwriting across whiteboards that hadn't been erased in weeks, her quantum pulse weapon was nearly complete, but the enormity of what it required made her hands shake as she worked. The device wouldn't just disrupt the harvester's hive mind, it would need every remaining ship in the galaxy to coordinate perfectly. Phi and G in unison across multiple star systems. "It's impossible," she whispered to herself, then caught her reflection in a darkened computer screen. Her eyes were bloodshot, her hair unkempt. But there was something else there, a fierce determination that had kept her working for 72 hours straight. "No," she corrected herself. "It's just very, very difficult." Q walked through the halls of the emergency command center, his footsteps echoing in corridors that had once been filled with the confident chatter of diplomats and generals. Now, holographic projections showed the faces of alien leaders he remembered from better times, beings who had once dismissed. Earth is a backwater planet populated by aggressive primitives. The Centauri Prime Minister, whose silver skin had once gleamed with arrogance, now appeared dull and scarred. Half his face was covered by a regeneration mask, the result of a harvester attack that had left him clinging to life. "President Q," he said, his voice barely a whisper through the translator. We were wrong, so terribly wrong." Behind him, other faces appeared on the screens, the insectoid queen of the Vega cluster, missing 3 of her 6 arms. The crystalline beings of Arcturus, their bodies cracked and dim. The proud warriors of the Orion Belt, their mighty ships, reduced to a handful of battle-scarred vessels. Each carried the weight of their people's survival on their shoulders. "We offer everything," the Centauri Prime Minister continued, his words heavy with shame. "Our remaining technology, our ships, our lives. We kneel before humanity and beg for your leadership." President Q felt no satisfaction in this moment. The vindication he might have expected was replaced by a heavy sadness. These weren't enemies surrendering. They were people just like humans facing extinction. "Get up," he said quietly. "All of you. We don't have time for kneeling. We have a war to win." In the orbital command station above Earth, Commander Jin studied the tactical displays with new eyes. The mixed fleet assembling around Earth looked like nothing he'd ever seen. Sleek alien vessels with energy weapons that could crack moons, positioned alongside human ships bristling with the kinetic weapons and missile pods that had proven so effective against the harvesters. The aliens brought overwhelming firepower, but the humans brought something equally valuable: tactics, adaptability, and most importantly, immunity to the harvesters' technology-draining abilities. The quantum pulse needs to hit simultaneously across 14 different star systems. Jin explained to his mixed crew of human and alien officers. The timing has to be perfect down to the nanosecond, or the Harvester's hive mind will adapt and counter our attack. A young Zephyrian officer raised her hand tentatively. Commander, our ships can generate the power needed, but our navigation systems are top compromised. The Harvester's attacks have left us with significant technological gaps. Jin nodded. That's why we're pairing each alien vessel with a human ship. You provide the firepower, we provide the coordination. No one fights alone. The bridge fell silent as the weight of their mission settled over them. 14 star systems, hundreds of ships, millions of lives hanging in the balance. One mistake, one ship firing even a fraction of a second too early or too late, and the entire operation would fail. Captain Hai sat in the pilot's seat of the specially modified assault ship, her hands steady on the controls despite the knot of fear in her stomach. The quantum pulse weapon had been installed in her ship's hull, its strange blue glow visible through the reinforced windows. Dr. Yoon had explained the activation process 3 times, her voice growing quieter with each repetition. The weapon requires manual activation from within the blast radius, Dr. Yoon had said, unable to meet Hai's eyes. Hai had simply nodded. Someone had to do it. Someone had to be close enough to ensure the weapon fired correctly, to make the small adjustments that might mean the difference between success and failure. She thought of her daughter, safe in the underground bunkers, and found her peace with the choice. The final battle began not with fanfare, but with a quiet countdown echoing across the galaxy. Ships dropped out of hyperspace in perfect formation, their crews holding their breath as they waited for the signal. Human vessels provided targeting data while alien ships charged their weapons to maximum power. Hai's ship approached the massive Harvester mothership that had been feeding on Earth's moon. The alien vessel was beautiful in its terrifying way, a living mountain of metal and organic components that pulsed with stolen energy from a dozen worlds, 5 seconds. She could see the Harvester drones beginning to swarm toward her, their sensors finally detecting the threat, but they were too late. Fire. Across the galaxy, hundreds of ships fired in perfect unison. The quantum pulse erupted from Hai's ship just as the Harvester mothership's weapons began to charge. The blue wave of energy swept outward, and for a moment, space itself seemed to hold its breath. The Harvester's hive mind, which had coordinated the destruction of civilizations across the galaxy, suddenly went silent. Ships that had moved with perfect coordination began to drift aimlessly. The great feeding apparatus that had been draining Earth's moon simply stopped in her final moments. Captain Hai smiled as she saw alien and human ships working together, rescuing survivors and beginning the long work of rebuilding. The price of arrogance had been paid not just by the aliens who had underestimated humanity, but by all of them who had learned too late that survival required unity, sacrifice, and the courage to admit when they were wrong. Part 6. The New Order. The quantum pulse rippled across the galaxy like a wave of liberation, its blue energy washing over star systems where the Harvesters had once reigned supreme. In the command center orbiting Earth, silence fell as communication channels that had buzzed with desperate battle reports suddenly went quiet. Then, slowly, voices began to return, not the coordinated commands of the Harvester hive mind, but confused, scattered signals from creatures that had forgotten how to think as one. Dr. Yoon watched the readings on her instruments with tears streaming down her face. The quantum signature was perfect, exactly as her calculations had predicted. Across 14 star systems, the pulse had severed the neural connections that had made the Harvesters unstoppable. What had once been a coordinated galactic threat was now nothing more than millions of confused, mindless creatures floating in space. It worked, she whispered, her voice barely audible in the control room. Captain Hai... It worked. The battle that followed was unlike anything in galactic history. Without their hive mind to coordinate attacks and share information, the Harvesters became easy prey. Human ships, their crews trained in individual thinking and tactical flexibility, led the charge against creatures that could no longer adapt or respond to changing situations. The alien vessels, their advanced weapons systems devastating when properly directed, followed human tactical commands with precision born of desperation and newfound respect. Commander Jin watched from his flagship as harvester motherships, once unstoppable juggernauts, drifted helplessly through space while combined human-alien forces systematically destroyed them. The creatures inside, cut off from their collective consciousness, simply waited to die. There was no satisfaction in the victory, only the grim necessity of survival. "Sir," his communications officer reported, "we're receiving surrender signals from the remaining harvester vessels. They're asking for mercy." Jin closed his eyes for a moment, thinking of all the worlds that had been consumed, all the civilizations that had been harvested. "Negative," he said quietly. "Continue the bombardment. We cannot risk them reconnecting somehow." The cleanup took months. In every star system, human-led task forces worked to eliminate the remaining harvester presence while alien engineering teams began the massive task of rebuilding. But as the immediate threat faded, a new reality began to emerge, one that would reshape the galaxy forever. The surviving alien civilizations found themselves in a position they had never imagined. Their fleets were decimated, their technology compromised by harvester attacks, populations scattered across refugee camps and emergency shelters. Most importantly, their ability to defend themselves had been completely shattered. Needed protection? And there was only one species in the galaxy that had proven capable of providing it. President Q stood in the newly constructed assembly hall on Earth, watching as alien delegates filed in for the first meeting of what would become the Terran Protectorate. The irony was not lost on him. Just 2 years ago, these same beings had dismissed humanity as primitive warmongers, unworthy of galactic citizenship. Now they came as supplicants, seeking humanity's protection and guidance. The Centauri Prime Minister, his silver skin now bearing the permanent scars of harvester attacks, approached the podium with obvious difficulty. "President Q," he began, his voice carrying across the hall through universal translators, "we acknowledge the new reality." The Centauri Republic formally requests membership in the Terran Protectorate, with Earth as our protector and guide. By one, the other alien leaders made similar declarations. The proud Zephyrians, who had once boasted of their crystal cities and advanced philosophy, now offered their remaining technology in exchange for human protection. Of Orion, whose battle prowess had been legendary, submitted their surviving ships to human command. The crystalline beings of Arcturus, whose mathematical precision had once seemed superior to human intuition, now sought to learn from humanity's tactical flexibility. The establishment of the Terran Protectorate was not a conquest, it was a necessity born of survival. Earth became the center of galactic government, not through force, but through the simple fact that humans were the only species capable of protecting the others. Human military commanders took charge of defense fleets. Human diplomats negotiated trade agreements. Human scientists led research into new technologies that could prevent another harvester-type catastrophe. Admiral Tay, recently promoted from her position as a fleet commander, stood before the rebuilt Galactic Council in its new home on Earth. The council chamber was a marvel of human engineering enhanced by alien technology, a perfect symbol of the new order. The seats once reserved for alien supremacists now held beings who served as advisors under human leadership, their vast knowledge and experience valuable, but no longer dominant. The Terran Protectorate will not repeat the mistakes of the past, Admiral Tay declared, her voice carrying the authority of someone who had earned her position through battle rather than birthright. "We will not ignore warnings from any species. No matter how primitive they may seem, we will not dismiss new ideas simply because they come from unfamiliar sources. And we will never again allow arrogance to blind us to real threats." The alien council members nodded solemnly. They had learned, at a cost that could be measured in trillions of lives, that wisdom could come from unexpected sources. The humans they had once mocked as violent primitives had become their saviors. Not through superior technology, but through qualities the aliens had dismissed as worthless: adaptability, tactical thinking, and the ability to work together despite differences. Months passed, and the new order began to take shape. Human schools on Earth started teaching xenobiology and alien languages, while alien children across the galaxy learned human history and military tactics. The cultural exchange was unprecedented, but it was built on a foundation of mutual respect rather than the condescension that had characterized pre-war relations. In the heart of the rebuilt galactic capital, a memorial wall stretched for nearly a kilometer, its black surface engraved with the names of fallen heroes. Captain High's name was positioned at the center, surrounded by thousands of others who had given their lives to save not just humanity, but the entire galaxy. Alien children often came to the memorial with their human teachers, learning about sacrifice and courage from species they had once considered inferior. Young Zephyrian students would trace the human names with their delicate fingers, trying to understand how being so different from themselves had found the strength to die for strangers. Their teachers, both human and alien, would explain that courage was not about technology or advanced civilization, it was about doing what was right, even when it cost everything. The memorial's inscription, written in every major galactic language, served as a constant reminder of the price of arrogance. They warned us, but we would not listen. They fought for us, though we had scorned them. They died for us, though we had called them primitive. Let their sacrifice teach us that wisdom comes not from superiority, but from humility. As the years passed and the Terran Protectorate grew stronger, the galaxy began to heal. But the lesson remained clear. Ignoring Earth's warning had indeed been their biggest mistake. And it had taken the near extinction of galactic civilization to learn that humanity's greatest strength was not their weapons or their technology, but their willingness to fight for others, even those who had shown them nothing but contempt.